You're listening to the Entrepreneur Ignited podcast, where we aim to simplify online business so you can make more money. Now, here's your host, Gehl.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Ignited podcast. This is your host, Gehl, and in this episode, I'm really excited to have the opportunity to interview an internet entrepreneur that I've known for well over a decade, and something that I have a massive amount of respect for two things. First of all, you know, he's got an incredible story, and he built an incredible business, a business now that has helped probably millions of people start learning to play piano. And the second reason I have so much respect for him is he's such a savvy internet marketer because he has taken this business. When I've watched businesses come and go and consistently grown that business over the past decade, and one of his keys to success is the level of automation that he applies to everything in his business and in his marketing, to the point that I think it would be fair to call him the king of automation. You know, he's been named Infusionsoft Marketer of the Year, and he's just a damn smart internet marketer. So I'd like to welcome Jermaine Griggs to our show. Jermaine, thanks for taking the time to be here.
Hey, Derek, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, especially with you, because you're a big part of my earlier story, you and Corey. So it's just great to come full circle.
It is awesome, and I was totally looking forward to this day. It's been a while since we've had a chance to catch up. But you know, it's funny, on Facebook, because of Facebook, you know, even if you don't talk to somebody often, if you're friends with them on Facebook, you just kind of feel like you know what's going on in their life, right? You know, you can go and check, see what they're up to. Although you're not an avid Facebook poster.
Right. I think I'm a lurker, though. So I'm watching. I'm posting, 2-3 times a year, but better believe I'm watching. So you're absolutely right. I feel like even though I haven't seen you, that I've kept up with you. And, you're still here.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so Jermaine, we've got a lot of people that are listening to this podcast that, have just started this journey into building businesses online, and people that are further along. But, where I want to start, before we get into the automation, can you just share your story of how you got started? And because I truly believe it is such an inspiration to people. And so I'm going to pass this to you. Just take a few minutes, share your story. How did you get started with Hear and Play? And tell us sort of the process you went through.
Absolutely. It really was a natural progression. I had been playing piano since like the age of 7. And you've heard the story so many times, Derek, but my grandma had this piano and she would play it in our living room. I lived with my grandma, my mom, and my sister. And we lived in the inner city. It was like these projects. I didn't know they were called projects until my friends in high school told me, oh, you live in the projects. But it was just this community of apartment buildings. And what we did have, though, was this close-knit, loving family relationship. To this day, my wife's like, your family is just too much. You guys meet every other week for something. And that's what we had. And so I admired my grandma on that piano, and I would get the pots and pans and play them. And eventually I got on there, and she had like a church gospel sound. And so I developed kind of like my own little sound. And then, by 7, 8, I'm playing Disney tunes I'm hearing. And I just developed this knack for playing the piano without sheet music. And that's important because that would be my specialty with Hear and Play. Almost a decade later, teaching people how to play without sheet music, just as I had done it. And, some of that was just natural proclivities, but a lot of it was learning these patterns and learning how to listen strategically to the music. You could listen to the music one way if you're not a musician, and I can listen to it a totally different way and see how, singing your ABCs is the same as singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Like, those songs are the same, but it could fool the non-musician. So I just developed this interesting way of looking at music. And then here I am playing for church at 10, and then playing for choirs and starting stuff in my high school, by 13, 14, and then neighborhood kids, parents are asking me to teach these kids. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So here I am with 6, 7 students, and one thing that I don't know how I got it, but I just had this need to write it down, like, make workbooks out of this stuff. So I already had like an automation leverage mindset at 16. I was like, well, teaching the same thing to Chrissy over here as I'm teaching to Mike. Well, let me write down how to play the scales the way I have learned them and how to play the chords. And that became like my first set of products, like my first workbooks. And then obviously I'm also on the internet at this time, AOL 2.0, baby. This is like, you've got mail, you've got mail. And one thing about me, it wasn't just the piano, but in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill talks about this burning desire, Derek. And as young as I can remember, I just had this desire to just be something more. Like I was that kid, I wasn't worried about playing the Game Boy. Here I am, like I sold Avon at 12. The lady, I answered the ad in the little magazine, and the lady knocks on the door, and she looks down at her paper, and she says, "I'm here to see Jermaine." I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Is your mom here? I said, "Well, I'm Jermaine. You're talking to Jermaine. Look down. That's me." Mom signs up in my downline. Grandma signs up in her downline. Grandpa signs up in her downline, and we're in business. So that's that same kid, right, who's willing to do that at 12 is that same kid who at 16 is ready to, harness this internet thing and figure it out. And that's when hearandplay.com, which is my company name. What do? I hear and I play. Simple as that. Hear and Play was born August 6, 2000. We're actually celebrating 15 years this month, Derek.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and it wasn't always easy. I can't say August 6, 2000, I put up that site and the masses came, right?
Yeah, no, and it's funny. I think a lot of people look back on businesses and go, "Oh, you just put up a site and it was successful," but you had to put in a lot of hard work. Now, you've done something that is a bit of an exception, actually, and that is you had a business that you started back in 2000, and I think it's safe to say that in your niche, in the how to play piano niche, in general, there's a fair whack of competition. It's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got. Wait, Derek, I kind of missed that line. You might have to edit this. You said lack of competition?
No, you have a ton of competition.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard lack.
No, good. No, we're good. We don't need to edit. This is off the cuff. No, yeah, you don't have any competition. No, you have a ton of competition. And over the past decade, with a ton of competition, you've managed to consistently sustain and grow your business. And through that, you've also become known as kind of the automation king, this automation expert, and obviously a very savvy marketer. Now, what I want to dig into with you today is how did you go from, obviously you had a few books, you had your piano courses initially. In the early days, it was easier to get traffic for sure, right? But it became more competitive. How did you evolve your business to effectively compete in today's market, particularly in a niche that has so much competition?
Absolutely. I think, and then over the years, that's actually where you and Corey come into the picture, where I actually figured this thing out, infusing direct response marketing with what I had already done, built up a small community of musicians. But over the years, I've got to say that I probably have a lot to do with building competition, because half of the websites I see pop up will come to me saying, "Man, I was inspired by your story, and I'm a piano teacher." I'm like, really? Okay. But yes, we have a lot of competition. We have the big boys, we got the big publishers on one end, but then we got the mom and pops, putting up sites. And then we got the garage piano players on YouTube, and YouTube's a huge competitor. Mm-hmm. And if you're not looking at YouTube as a real potential threat, I mean, it's huge, because you can just go type in a song on YouTube and there you have it. So yeah, those are threats. And so what we've done over the years is really harness the power of personalization, right? I always tell people that the problem with the internet is there's too much information now, and it creates the opportunity to give people the right information in the right order with the right plan, right? So just the abundance of information is not enough. It creates opportunities. And so what I noticed early on is that if I grab somebody's name and email, like there's two ways to do this. Everybody says the money's in the list, and it is in the list, right? But a fortune is in the data rich, personalized, experienced driven, if you will, list. And that's around 2006, 2007. I really started to harness when I get someone's email, I want to take them down a personal path, if you will. And the best way to describe this, like a big box kind of retailer, is Amazon. And we know Amazon is all about selling. I mean, you don't go to Amazon particularly to get information like Wikipedia. You go there to buy, right? But unlike most other retailers, what happens when you view cameras on Amazon? What happens when you show interest in business books or horror fiction novels or what have you? You start to get an experience on Amazon, not only on the page, but off the page via email. You get follow-up based on other viewers and based on other data, based on things you viewed. And Amazon's got some kind of proprietary thing that makes sure they don't overwhelm Derek all at once, because I know he's looked at 10 different things. But over time, we're going to push those things back to Derek if he hasn't taken action. And in a similar way with Hear and Play, you have to ask a lot of questions. So while the other marketers are going for first name and email saying, your conversions will be through the roof, I step back and I say, well, what'll happen if I ask them for what skill level they're on? Because I believe if I know whether they're beginner, intermediate, or advanced, that I can take them, first of all, down a personal path that won't overwhelm them if they're a beginner, but won't underwhelm them if they're advanced. So that alone. And if that's worth 2 percentage points of opt-in, so if I'm getting 38% instead of 40, I'm willing, because I'm going to make that up when you look at the lifetime value, when you look at the value of that person going through that funnel, knowing that they're a beginner versus advanced. And then likewise, I said, well, what if I add their skill level? Not their skill level, their genre, their favorite style. So if I know they're jazz oriented or they want to learn gospel church like me and my grandma came up with, oh man, those are two different people. So that probably was my biggest distinction in the beginning that really set me apart from even the other could-be internet marketers taking the same advice that I learned, but I was able to take it a step further. Until this day, you'll get a personal experience from me, depending on what you tell me.
What you just said was so loaded with important tips. I hope everybody listening is taking note. Now, I'm gonna reverse here and highlight a couple of the key things that stood out, and there was a lot that stood out to me. The first thing you said there was, I think anybody starting out needs to listen to, and that is the fact that we're in a place now where there's too much information out there. And so you're a perfect example. You teach people how to play piano. You're in a niche within that space, teaching people how to play piano by ear. But like you said, you have competitors from big companies to the small guys in their garage to the YouTube. And YouTube's massive. You can go there and learn how to play any song. So so many people starting out say to me, well, there's all this free stuff. How am I ever going to compete? But I love how you positioned that, and I'm going to steal that for the future positioning, just so you know, because it was so good. People ask me that all the time, and I'm like, well, I always try and explain. Look, people want it in a concise. They want to know they're getting the right information in the right order, and you put it perfectly, right? There's people want good information. They want it personalized. They want it in the right order, and I love what you're talking about there as far as personalization, which is the next point, because there's still, and I'm guilty of it. I'm totally guilty of it. You're just like, first name, email address. In fact, there's a swing now in the internet marketing space where there's a lot of people standing up saying, don't ask for first name, just ask for email. You'll get more people to opt in. Now, it's interesting to hear your positioning on it. You're saying, no. If they don't if they're not willing to give me a little bit more information, I'm willing to forego having them on my list.
Absolutely.
And that makes total sense, because you're building quality in your database. And I think that's a tough one. I know for marketers, it's that, it's the quantity versus quality. And you've been around the space for so long. We all like to, talk about how big our database is, right?
Right.
But it's not the size; it's the quality and the personalization. Now, when you talk about personalization, so you're asking obviously for first name, you're asking for email. How far do you go? And two-part question: how much information will you ask for? And do you ask for it all at once, or do you just start them with "Hey, what's your email first name? Now tell me this."
Right. A very good question. And I'll tell you, over the span of our relationship, I asked for a lot of information, but definitely not at once. So I'm in agreement with you and the other marketers that say, obviously, the more you ask, your conversions are naturally going to lower, even from a well-intentioned person. People are just bombarded, and there's this attention problem now. We've all got ADD, either forced upon us or naturally, and email daily and Facebook and all this stuff. I mean, from the best of us, from the best of the well-intentioned, focused people, we just can't help it. Facebook is calling us like 10 minutes after we get off this call, Derek. We're going to our fingers are naturally going to type it in our computers. And that's what we're dealing with. So yes, up front, I'm only going to ask for 2 additional pieces of information. And the pieces of information that I ask for are in alignment with my offer. That's important, right? So, you can't just ask for some stuff that people are going to say, why do you want to know that? See, so that's the question I must answer. Why do you want to know that? Okay, I'm asking for first name and email. And then I ask you whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, your skill level. Okay, does that naturally answer the question, why would you want to know that? Like if some jerk emailed us and said, why do you want to know if I'm a beginner, intermediate, or advanced? I would have fun with my reply, right? So that'd be my first thing. Like, could I have fun, answering a sarcastic question? Why would I want to know this? Okay, here, this is, and then genre makes sense, because if you're in a jazz, I don't want to send you gospel church. If you're in a pop, I don't want to send you rock, so that those work. But then what I do is my offering, there's other pages though, like on the blog, I look at what they're doing. If they're reading a blog post, well, I might pop up first name and email. And then on the next page, I already got them locked in. And Robert Cialdini taught us that in the book Influence, right? Commitment and consistency. And it's true, micro commitments. Yeah, and it's true. Start with, name and email in some instances. But on the next page, I do not give up the opportunity to collect that skill level and that genre. In fact, my sequence can't start without it. My sequences and my follow-up wouldn't make sense without that information, Derek. I can't even get you started. The most I can do with you, the way I have things set up, is remind you to go back to that page and give me your skill level and genre. It's not even set up outside of that. Wow. Because I can't. It's not set up. Like, I can only go generic with you. And a long time ago, I stopped going generic. So you have to go down a path with me. And then the thing is, once you do that, I send you the 4 videos, and I break them up on purpose, because if someone wants to put me to the test, go sign up at hearandplay.com. Under each video is 2 additional pieces of information. I want to know why you want to play piano. And Derek, this hasn't changed since we were on the road. We skipped that part of the story, but in the earlier days, I was asking this stuff back in 2003 when we didn't even have all of the infusion sauce and the ways to really, do this stuff. But yeah, I'm still on it, because that stuff is important, because, you say you want to play piano because you just want to have fun. Well, that's going to be a different sales page or a different sales video than someone who says, man, I want to make this my profession. That's a different path. So I'm a data collector for sure. And not only collecting the data, because that's only half of it, but taking them down a path and even triggering emails based on that answer. Let's trigger an email, a couple days from now that just happens to tell a story specifically about that scenario they answered, stuff like that. And it's easy in this landscape and this environment with technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the crux of where we are today versus where we used to be. And we've been doing this for a long time, is technology makes this so much easier than it used to. Now, I was down at a conference in Las Vegas probably about a month ago, and I met up with a fellow entrepreneur, Chet Womack, who we both know. Oh, and we got onto the topic of you, and Chet was saying, Jermaine's just such a smart marketer. He's got it so dialed in. He drops an email address in the front end of his website, and money comes out the back end. Right? And he's created this machine. Now, how many, just to give some scope here, how many funnels now exist within the Hear and Play umbrella? If you had to, and I don't even know if you can answer this question, but how many paths are there?
There's so many paths, Derek. I don't want to scare anybody, but in terms of like unique campaigns, is probably easily 6 dozen different like sort of campaigns. But then within like my big campaign, that 4 video one, that's like my bread and butter, that's 168 steps. And
Wow.
I don't want to scare anyone. Like, did I just sit down and do 168 emails, 168 paths? Absolutely not. Over time, I've added different things here and there, because when you get into automation, there's so many things you can do. Now, that doesn't mean you should do them. At some point, so far down the path, you may not get the return on energy. But if an email takes you 10 minutes and it's a forever email that now goes in step 169, duh. I mean, if you're on Facebook liking a couple photos in 20 minutes, when you could just pop out an email that you can add, at the end of, for example, like nowadays, like when we first got started, we couldn't do this. But think about it. Okay, I can send you an email, Derek. And now I got many things. I can track whether you open that email. That's not too hard. And if I wanted to, I could pop out an email a day later just because you opened that email, depending on what technology you're using. I can say opens too much. Well, if Derek clicks the email, I can pop out some other step, an hour later. We'd even do stuff where we'll text message them like 2 minutes after they click, from one of my sales reps trying to get them on the phone to close. And then there's if they don't do it. So you got all the actions they can do. And then there's like, what happens if they don't do it? And so that's like 4 options right there. Now times that by like just 5 emails and you've got many different things. And like I said, it doesn't make sense to take down, like if this was a tree and those were all branches, it doesn't make sense to go far down every branch. But then like me, when you start getting into skill level and genre, it does create an opportunity like Amazon to be like, whoa, if Derek clicks the last, couple emails, let's send him the offer. Let's get him to the sales page. And then if he gets to the sales page, well, there's opportunities there too. Does he order? No. Does he opt into something else? Sure. So what I'm trying to say is it naturally, this isn't like, I can't think of 168 things. You don't have to. You just answer the next question. You just say, well, what happens if they do what I want? And then what happens if they don't? And then I got this was a eye opener. People don't even read. I mean, think about open rates. Yeah. If you got a 20% open rate, that means 80% didn't even read it. If you got 12% click, that means 88% didn't even click. Your follow-up could be just forwarding them the same email that they didn't click on yesterday. And that doubles your follow-up. And it doesn't even matter because they didn't even see it.
That's incredible. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. And, there's so many things that affect email. And you're right. Like, I mean, open rate. We talk about open rate. And what's our open rate? It totally depends. But let's say it's 15 or 20%. There's still 80% of the people that you haven't engaged with. So you need to keep working on those people. Now, when you when somebody comes to your website, all right, I come to your website and I opt in for your 4-lesson series. I start giving you that data. What is the sequence? What is the length of the sequence that is automated? Now, I know a lot of people say, hey, I've got my first 10 days automated, and they just start sending out random campaigns, and there's no real thought behind it. And I've always been a big believer is automate as far out as you can.
Right.
So how far out do you go in your automation?
Well, that sequence, because it's my bread and butter, if you give me your email today, let's just say, and I'm not hoping this happens, but I could pass away tomorrow and you would still hear from Jermaine Griggs 2 years later. I thought that guy died. you know, it could be. So I would live on at least. I mean, in a very authentic, real way. You would be like, "Oh my gosh, what is
Oh my
going on
God.
here?" That would literally happen. I mean, like I'm launching stuff. Everything is so evergreen. I'm so careful and don't mention, current events. I mean,
Yeah.
you would think like my buddy was playing basketball with me last year. We were at 24 Hour Fitness late. All of us were playing, and he was like, "Man, aren't you launching your jazz course tomorrow? It's coming out like at 9 a.m. I've been getting the countdowns and everything." And I'm like, "No, man, it's only coming out for you. It's coming out for you because you're at step, I don't know, 59." He's like, "Whoa, that's dope." I'm like, "Yeah, shoot the shot, man. We got things to do." But that's the idea. Like I always say, okay, there's several ways to set these things up. And I'm not saying to negate the manual part. Everybody, Jeff Walker does the launches, and everybody, you can do a launch. That's cool. And that's what I would put in the manual category. But that launch gives you all this data. You got conversion rates, you got email data, you got all these assets. The very next step to be then, how can I systematize this? So first is manual, then it's systematized. And that's just saying, okay, let me take out anything specific. Let me just try to get this to the point where if I wanted to redo this or hand this off to a virtual assistant, they can almost redo this launch. I got my same videos. We've edited them. We've made them so that this could almost happen without me. Again, still manual, but it's more system. And then the next step is, how do I automate this? How do I make this step 30? In my process? They go through my 4 videos. Now they're on a launch, but a launch that I really orchestrated 5 years ago. But it works so well that because they've never seen it before and it's evergreen, that it will have just as much impact as when I did it 5 years ago. You know how many people are sitting on assets of things that actually worked for them that they're no longer using, or out of sight, out of mind? You know what? I go back to the days when me, you, and Corey where you guys were mentoring me, and I go figure out, I still have an email that you guys do, your inventory email, that every once in a while, I'll recycle that baby because it's not old because you used it 12 years ago. There's new people coming through the funnel. So, you got to recycle your stuff and try to get it automated and to just use it till it doesn't work anymore. And I'm not saying your automated stuff will always work, but it's more better than sitting on an asset that worked very well and never to be seen again.
This is why, I think one of the other keys to your success and why I respect you so much as a marketer is, over the last, let's call it 5 years, 6 years, product launch has become huge, right? The big product launch, how to launch a product, the $1 million launches. And then what I see happen is people launch these products. They get a huge influx of business. They get all these sales. And then they spend the next, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year servicing, fulfilling those sales. But now their leads have dried up. Right. And then all of a sudden cash flow dries up, and all of a sudden they're going, oh no, where do we get our next stream of income? So, I mean, how you've done this is, in my books, the right way to do this. I love product launches. If you have a new product and you have a database and you have affiliates, launch it, right? Get out there, launch it, use that sequence, but then do what you've done. Make it timeless. And, we use the term evergreen. And I think I just want to explain what we mean when we say evergreen, because people think, what, like trees? And effectively, evergreen means taking a launch sequence for a product and making it timeless so that it can run on autopilot. Now, I want to talk, you obviously email is still the foundation communication technology you're using. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And we do broadcasts as well, because the automated sequence is only so long. And then you don't want to just, in the same way, you don't want to kick those people off because you automated and then not stay in contact with them. So there's a mixture between automation and also the same broadcasting that existed for years.
Yeah. And so 2 questions for you. Obviously, you're emailing a fair amount. Now, if I was to subscribe to your list, what is the frequency that I would start to see emails come out from you?
That's the interesting question. And I mean, with like Infusionsoft and some of these things, your frequency would depend on how active you are with me, actually, quite frankly, because some of the emails you'll get are only because you clicked on the first video. And then other emails you'll get are only because you clicked on a previous blog post. So one thing with us is that everything we do, we're collecting data. I even think with Aweber you can do this, although I haven't been an Aweber member for a while. But every click, there should be some kind of label or tag that can be applied to that user's record. So for us, I mean, every little click you do, and then there's future emails where you only get them if you actually engage. So let's look at it like a sort of like a pyramid. Like on the base level, you may get an email every 10 days, right? That's just base. Like if you don't do anything, I'm gonna stay in contact with you at least 4 times a month. And this is where marketers go wrong, because you get on their list, they just want to email you every day. And, list fatigue is there. And then there's the second layer where like, okay, if you actually engage in the beginning with my 4 video sequences, I look at you as a different kind of engaged user. And that might get you an email every 4 to 5 days. And then if you up your relationship with me, like multiple clicks, multiple recent clicks, then I have this little pyramid. I actually have names like acquaintances, and then you become, I forget like my specific terminology, but at the top you're my homeboy, and that might get you an email every 2 days, Derek. But at that point, you're so engaged and feeling me in my process that you don't mind. And think about the people in your inbox that have reached that level with you in your psychology. You're like, you'll delete everything else, but you'll leave them there because they've proven to you that every time you open their email, there's value there and you can't go wrong. And so I want to become that person, but I don't automatically assume I'm that person from the day out. I've tried to let the technology and the tagging systems, once you get a certain tag, to me, it's like, you've accomplished something from my end, and that to reward you. And I even, I increase frequency with you. And so that's kind of how it works. So if you're like the best client, it depends, because sometimes if you're the best client, you can get less emails because there's no reminders in there. So I guess it just depends. Every once in a while, I go through my own sequence and see, but I'd say on average, probably every 3 to 4 days if you're doing what I want you to do.
And that's interesting. I want to sort of extrapolate on something you just said here. You just finished up and said every 3 to 4 days. Now, one of the things I want to clarify is the way you do this. To send something every 3 or 4 days can go extremely well, as it does for you, or it can go poorly. I sign up to lists that I get emailed every 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and it's just, hammering me with buy this, buy this, buy this. And if you did the same thing, you would probably have list fatigue, people unsubscribing, complaining very, very quickly. Right. But one of the things that I want to point out to the listeners here is Jermaine you're not actually emailing a set sequence of on day 3, on day 5, on day 10, guaranteed everybody's going to get this every single time. And this is how most people think about autoresponders. But to that point, autoresponder technology has gotten so much smarter. And this is how we need to be using it today, whether you're using Infusionsoft like you do and I do, or GetResponse has smart responders now. Aweber has smart responders, where now they're action-based autoresponders. So as you said, people only get an email in many cases if they've done something, right? So it's so relevant to them. And so I just wanted to really clarify that for the listeners so that people understand that you can email people daily if they're super engaged and they want to hear from you. And the technology exists for us to determine if they're engaged and to determine that on autopilot. So that's a super valuable lesson you just taught to everybody there. And it's a real shift, and I think how a lot of people think about email marketing. Now, next question is, I'm just mining you for as much information as possible, and you're being so generous with it as well. That's what I love about you. You never hold back. Now, you're not just using email though. Yeah, and I know this because you let it slip a minute ago. You also text people, right?
Absolutely.
So we're in a world now where I agree. I believe that email is still the dominant communication channel to get the highest response. But there's all these peripheral communication channels that exist now as well, whether it be social, whether it be SMS and text messaging, whether it be webinars or whatever. What are the different mediums that you're using, channels that you're using to communicate through a funnel?
Yeah, we're using just about everything. And like I said, it's always been the answer to that question, like, what else can I do? And so, yeah, email's the foundation. And what we'll do is we'll make an offer, a very low end offer for like this CD set, and that'll give us an address and a credit card. And with that, we'll incorporate our first set of direct mail. And Infusionsoft, for example, you can like one of your steps, like just like regular autoresponder, like you can throw out an email here, throw out an email there, or you can throw out a letter, like which is direct mail. You can throw out a CSV file for your, mail house. They'll get a file every day, titled "Send these people, letter 123," or So we already have all of our letters. Let's say we've got like Dan Kennedy long style letters, we've got catalogs, and they're already labeled. So the people will get steps like that. But I don't want to give everybody. Like I'm not. I come from the internet. I'm a little spoiled, compared to those old school direct marketers. So I'm not just throwing out direct mail letters just to do it. But as you ascend, in your customer value, and that could just be taking me up on an offer that's just a little bit more serious than my 4 videos. Now you're getting direct mail from us. But another thing that we do that a lot of people don't do is as you're watching the 4 videos, there's an offer to join my Monday Music Minute, and that's a text message of the week program. And somebody said, "Wow, you're sending out a text message every Monday?" No, I created those text messages in 2008. I did 156, I believe, all at once. And they're not hard. They're like little tweets. So I just sat down. It only took me like 2-3 hours, and I just said, how many different music concepts can I boil down into a little tweet? Like one of them, for example, and somebody's going to get this. You can play a minor scale by just playing a major scale from the 6th tone to the next 6th tone. Like a major scale becomes a minor scale by starting on the 6th tone. Like, so I can say that in like 156 characters. That becomes one of my messages. But what it also does is it's a unique way to get, a cell phone number, a mobile phone number. And this is different than where people start text messaging because you did a reminder on a webinar. Like you wanted to get a reminder, so you put in your cell phone. That does not naturally give permission to keep sending me messages. So people kind of walk that fine line there. You're not supposed to send them, messages 6 months from now just because they gave you their text message. But when you're sending a Monday Music Minute every Monday into perpetuity, like we are. So mine is 3 years in advance, because if you do 56 weeks, 52 weeks times 3, that's about 156 messages. And so if I throw in I know it's Monday Music Minute, but if I throw in a little offer, that tag teamed with an email that they got on a Wednesday morning, they're not going to mind that because I'm giving so much value every Monday. So the question is, how can I incorporate all these other channels? But how can I do it in a way that is less obtrusive and more strategic? Like even with the direct mail, we got something called a monthly music mentor. And that's a CD they get every month, for like $20 a month. But as Dan Kennedy would say, your newsletter and that media that you send in the mail, that is the best vehicle to advertise other stuff. No one's going to mind that I put a little flyer in there for something. So now I'm in your direct mail. I'm on your cell phone. I'm in your email box, and many things. I'm in your birthday. Like you give me your birthday. I'm going to give you another strategy. How do you collect birthday? Okay. Well, remember my rule. You can just ask for birthday, but how do I do it strategically, and how do I make it make sense where they can answer the question, why do you want to know that, right? Why do you want to know that? Well, when they buy one of our products, we give them digital downloads, or they're buying a digital download. And to access the digital download, I ask for email, obviously, but instead of you coming up with a password, Derek, I say, you know what? People forget passwords, we've learned, but they never forget birthdays. So we want you to use your birthday as your password. And you can go to hearandplay.com/digital center till this day. And you can see where people have to log in with email and birthday. But what do? We take that data, and now you get a birthday card from us. You get Starbucks cards. You get cookies. So we're implementing gift marketing. We're implementing birthday cards, all the different modalities, but in ways that don't seem obtrusive, and in ways that are very strategic for us to continue to get our messages into different places that they convene.
That's brilliant. And, the lesson to take away from everything you just said there, well, there's multiple lessons, but so many people get online and they just focus on email and they think, okay, I got an email, I'm just going to email it. But there's so many creative ways that you can use these other channels, and you've given us quite a few there. But what's unique about how you're doing this, and what I want everybody to take away is you're doing it in kind of a stealthy way where it never feels wrong. It never feels dirty. It never feels like you're just asking for stuff so you can market stuff, which is absolutely brilliant. And okay, so we're running out of time here, and I've got a couple more questions for you. Now, anybody in your position that's been around for a while that has this sophisticated of a marketing system, I don't even have to ask to know that you're a data-driven person, right? And you're probably constantly measuring stuff. So when people are getting started, what are the top KPIs, key performance indicators, metrics, whatever you want to call them, that you're looking at on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
That's a great question. So I take this approach. I don't know who I got it from, but forest, trees, branches, leaves. Forest, trees, branches, leaves. And leaves are very specific things. For a beginner to be wasting their time on a red versus blue headline, not to say that won't make or break something, but my perspective on it, which is a lot contrarian, is that's very leafy. That's very specific. And if you're Agora or you're sending out 1 million pieces of mail, well, that blue versus red, even if it only lifts you by 0.025 or whatever, it makes a difference with 1 million pieces. That could be the difference in 100 grand in more profits or whatever. But with 100 eyeballs seeing it, it may not even affect one. It's not even, the percentage isn't even big enough to even affect one action. So you have to be careful with those kinds of things. So the bigger metrics, like forest metrics, are, first of all, like you said if I plug in an email address, after a finite period of time, what has my lifetime customer value been? And this is not that hard to do, especially for all the people listening. You've already got a track record. You've already got some customers in. We've got particular things that inside of Infusionsoft, we can go to reports and I can say, hey, tell me everybody in January 2014. We take about a 14-month window, Derek. So tell me everybody, let's say in January 2014, and that means their contact had to be created in that month. And then I want to see what that group is worth now, let's say 14 months later, right? And then I divide by the number of people in that population, in that group. And that'll tell me, wow, after 14 months, that group is worth $500 each, on average. And then I go to February. I could do the same thing with February and see if that holds true. If I want to, I can keep doing that if I want to. And that'll give me a very confident number, an average, if you will, of what my customers are worth. Because like absolute lifetime is very hard because time is still going. So it's always going to get higher, because like if I started something a year from now and now I just launched something on year 2, well, my lifetime's going to rise, but I want to know relative because everything's automated, first of all. So I want to know in the first 14 months, no matter when they start, on average, what are they going to be worth a year and 2 months later, for example, or just a year later? And that gives me the confidence now to be able to go out to Facebook. And if I'm going to do an advertisement, a lot of people, they'll turn off their advertisements because they didn't make that money back today. They spent $100 and they didn't make $150 back, then they're discouraged, where I might spend that same $100. Let's just say I do a one-time offer, I do all the same stuff everybody else does, but let's just say it only makes back $60. Okay, $100, it only made back $60. Well, yeah, I could be amateurish and I could shut that down. And there's other reasons, cash flow reasons and stuff like that. Or I could say, you know what? Let me follow that same person. Let me keep going. I know their record was created today. Let me see where they're at a month from now. You may find out that $60 raises to $90. right? And now you're just $10 away from what you spent a month ago. Let me follow them 6 weeks from now. And you might find out that $90 is now at 105. You may say, okay, 2 months from now, you may find out that 105 is now at 130. And looking back, would you have done that investment? Would you have put $100 down to make back 130 in 2 months? Let's not treat the internet differently than we do the Dow Jones or S&P 500 index fund. If you wait a year to get 10% of your money back on the stock market, why can't you wait 60 days, 90 days, 6 months to get back 50% on the internet? Let's not treat the internet differently than any other financial vehicle of investing. You just have to look at that. That's a forest way to look at things. Lifetime value. And it doesn't have to get too advanced. Just kind of know, just have a good idea of how much that person's going to be worth after so much. If you got to go in and look at every customer, just figure that number out, because that'll give you more confidence. And Dan Kennedy, all the guys say, if you could spend more to acquire a customer, you win. Proactive Solution, all these companies, they spend, several months it takes to make their money back. But that's usually the difference, right? Okay, so that's a big number. Now, if you come down to a tree number, it's going to be stuff like, what is your opt-in conversion rate? Because all those things will affect. If you can get leads for 50 cents versus $1.50, well, that's 3 more times the people into your funnel, which means, 3 times more likelihood that, you'll get 3 times more sales, hopefully, if everything holds true. So yeah, you want to make sure your opt-in conversions are right. You're looking at, your conversions to your first offer. You're looking at those kinds of numbers. You're looking at your double opt-in conversions, depending on how stringent you are, if you require a double opt-in or not. Then you're looking at like RFM data, for example. So once they buy, it's not over. A lot of people, they go have their party and then go celebrate because they got that sale. The party only starts when you get that first sale. So you ought to be tracking stuff like how RFM stands for recency, frequency, monetary. So you should be tracking, on average, when is the last time my customers have done business with me? So all you got to do there is, if they do business with you January 1st, just go out and calculate on average how long it takes for your customers to come back to make their next purchase. And you ought to be constantly focused on decreasing that number. Frequency, how often do they order? If I take that same 14-month period or 12-month period or even 6-month period, how many sales do I get from the same customer, right? And just go research how to do these calculations in spreadsheets and stuff like that. And then monetary, how much is that person going to be worth, which we've actually talked about. And knowing those numbers is huge, because that'll tell you, number one, if you do want to send direct mail or you do want to spend a little bit more money on these customers, right? It tells you which ones to focus on. Are you going to go to your bottom of the ladder people, or are you going to go to your highest recency, people that have done business with you most recent, people that have done most frequently, people that have spent the most, right? You're going to spend your dollars on those people. So I'm looking at those kind of metrics. And then, the next level metrics, very specific metrics like open rates of each email in my sequence, click rates of each email in my sequence, specific things like that, time on page, engagement numbers, right? And then like the leafy stuff is, like I said, testing really, really specific stuff. But I've made enough money focusing on those big numbers like lifetime value and recency, frequency, monetary, and just knowing how much I can spend. And even if I want to go get a credit line or something like that, if I'm confident that that money's going to be back in 6 months, that's such a powerful stance to be at. And it takes up most of my time. And I don't really have to worry about red versus blue headlines. Not to say I wouldn't, but if our reach got, to the multiple millions of eyeballs, I'd go down that deep. But really focusing on those big numbers and watching those like a hawk for a year, and you'll see drastic growth.
Wow. Yeah, you just gave basically a master's degree education in direct response marketing in about 5 minutes. That was beyond impressive what you just delivered there. And for everybody listening, I think you're going to want to rewind that a few times. And honestly, Jermaine, that is one of the best explanations I've ever heard of how you do it with the forest, the trees, the branches, the leaves, what level you're focusing on. And one of the key points that you really emphasized there that I want to highlight again is lifetime value. And lifetime value becomes so important because as Jermaine said, if you can spend more for the advertising to acquire a customer, you win. Period. End of story. And yeah, so I mean, let me say thank you for everything you just shared there. That was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Now, as we're coming up to an end of the interview, and which really sucks because honestly, I would love to just sit here and pick your brain for about the next 6 hours, at least, and I'm sure that wouldn't be enough time. So I'll try and convince you to come back on this podcast in a future episode so we can continue this conversation. But before we wrap up today, 2 questions for you. You know, for people that are just starting out, just getting started in this adventure and this journey, becoming an entrepreneur online, you know, you've been there, you started this, you know, you don't have a formal education in this, you've taught yourself. What's your message when somebody's just getting started? What message would you send to them?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And what I would say, and you know this too, Derek, got this from Gary Halbert, is be market centric, right? And not necessarily product centric, right? So go figure out where people are hanging out, congregating. You know, the Facebook advertising, if you haven't just activated it, even if you don't have anything to sell yet, just go activate that part of Facebook. I always tell, I started something called online music business, and it was like teaching musicians how to become like teachers and harness the power of the internet and stuff like that. Just an evolution of hear and play. And I said, what side of the internet are you on? Are you on the Facebook side browsing and liking, or are you on the side perusing through research data and advertising? There's 2 sides of Facebook. People that are on there, don't message me. I'm not on there hanging out. You know, I'm on there in the ads department, and I just can't figure out how to turn my status off. You know, but I'm looking at, you know, so go in there just for the reason to be able to type in little keywords. You know, there's an interest box, and just go in there and type in keywords so that you can see all the relevant pages that come up and the reach. Like Facebook will show you, oh, yeah, there's 5 million people that are in the Piano by Ear Association. Oh, that's perfect. Oh, there's 180,000 people that like this particular gospel musician. Oh, okay. And just go through there and just try to find groups of people. Try to find specific groups, you know, and just go in there and become one of those persons and develop like a clear sense of, some would call it an avatar of who the person is that you want to help. So clear, like what do they look like? What's their age? What's their, you know, what's their social status? How much income do you think they make? What do they like to read? What sites do they like to go to? So you got a mix of demographic and you got psychographic data. And I think having an intimate knowledge of who that person is and knowing that they exist and just kind of sneaking and seeing how they talk and the problems they put in the groups will have such a huge impact when you go, you know, like with copywriting. You can go take somebody's course and learn how to copyright. But when you just know who you're talking to, like you're talking to a friend, you could take a whole lot more pressure off just writing to a person you know has a particular issue and you know how to write to them to appeal to them. You know, for example, a guy just sent out an email today that I saved, and it said something about how to be in a relationship with like an overachiever or something. And it was like perfect. Like me and my wife were both like that. But I forwarded it to her because I was like, you know, this may have, I'm going to read this too, but this, you might want to read it as well, you know, because, you know, we got our things. And it was like totally for me, like, how would he know that would be a good topic, right? Because he's taking time to go in the minds of his market and be like, yeah, there's probably like these like relationship things where like, you know, a person wants to take over the world, and what does their wife or their husband think, and how do they deal with that? What are the kind of conversations they have? You know, that's really getting into the minds of your market. So even in the beginning, you know, Gary Halbert said, if I had a hot dog stand and you had a hot dog stand, and we could bet on what thing, if something could fall out of the sky and I could say, you can give me that thing, you know, to increase my business, what would I ask for? And then other people in his audience, when he did this exercise, said, give me the best hot dog maker, because if I got the best hot dogs, it'll sell itself. You know, I'm making this up, but that's the spirit of it. Or give me the best signage, you know, because if I can attract people with, you know, fancy graphics, they'll come and line up. And then another person said, give me the best this, give me the best that. And then Gary Halbert said, you know what I would want? Just give me a starving crowd. Give me a starving crowd coming from a party or whatever, and I don't have to have the best sign. I don't even have to have the best hot dog or the best technology or the best booth. Just give me a starving crowd and they'll be lined up, for hours, right? That's the spirit of it. You can almost make all the mistakes, but if you actually pick your market right, you really take some time there and really focus on a group like piano by ear. The thing I have to say that made us so successful in the beginning is that when everybody's teaching sheet music and classical and Beethoven and Bach, and then I come out teaching like piano without all that stuff by ear, and then focusing on church musicians where they are.
Looks like Jermaine just lost his internet connection, and I will be right back as we get him back online. 1 second, and you'll hear a little bit of a cut, and then we should be back in a sec.
So I'm back on my cell phone connection. Sorry about that. But like I was saying, even with Hear and Play in the early days, it was so forgiving. I mean, I go back and I look at my marketing and there's a lot to be desired there. But think about what I did there. I went into a niche and I was able to just go a little deeper and really connect with a pain point that had been underrepresented. So, I'm not going to teach people how to play sheet music like the millions of other, students out there, Bach, Beethoven. That wasn't our approach. Our approach was playing by ear. And even more specifically, we naturally found a knack for the gospel industry, which was totally ignored. You can't go to college or music conservatory to learn how to play, soulful gospel music. So when we came on the scene, we were like this new, fresh, oh my gosh, I can learn how to play like soulful, charismatic church music. So my market was ready. And I remember, having no money. We started the site, $70. And I remember our first launch, back in like 2002, where, we made $6,000 selling our first like gospel DVD in one day. That was big money to me. And then that month we would do like $35,000. That was like our first entrance into gospel music, but not because our sales page was dialed in and we had this leafy red versus blue kind of testing or multivariate. No, we didn't have any of that. We just had a market that aligned with what we were offering, and the rest worked itself out. And obviously I got more sophisticated over time, and I went from forest level to trees, and I got more specific, with branches. And then there's some leafy things that we do very, very specific and honed in, but you don't have to start there. I think you pick your market right, you pick your pain points, you pick where you want to be, positioned, where you want to help in the world, where you want to give back, where you want to have your place and home be, and just progress confidently, and knowing that this is a business that you're creating. Don't look at this any differently than starting a brick and mortar, but just know that it is going to be a little easier and a lot less costly than starting a brick and mortar, but still bring in the same amount of commitment but go with confidence that you pick the right niche, but be flexible. If they don't come, you've done all you can and you just don't resonate with them, be flexible enough to say, maybe I picked the wrong market. I'll reinvent myself and I'll progress. But one thing I won't do is I won't stop.
And that is serious words of wisdom, and I could not agree with you more. Now, just to wrap things up, Jermaine, where can people learn more about you? Now, first of all, if you guys want to learn how to play piano by ear, I'll fully endorse hearandplay.com. Why? Because I've been to Jermaine's house and I've seen what he's able to do on a piano, and it blew my mind. Okay. So, bottom line is, if you want to learn how to play piano, go to hearandplay.com. But, if people want to learn business stuff from you, if they want to learn more about automation, where's the place to go?
AutomationClinic.com is my home there, AutomationClinic.com. And if you want to get on some specific videos that we've created there, it's AutomationVideos.com. And I also want to thank you, Derek. I didn't get to talk more about that story after I went to college, and then I found you guys. This was 13 years ago. I found the Internet Marketing Center, and that would create a relationship with you and Corey. And, Corey, would pass away in 2005, exactly 10 years from now. So I just have to say that this is more special to me than I've done 3 interviews this week, but this one is probably the most special interview of the year, seeing that it's been 10 years and you guys are a huge part of my success and really transitioning me from being in the wilderness, in a college and trying to figure this thing out, to really putting those direct response marketing strategies with internet marketing tactics. And it really all came together for me in 2002. That was my turning point. And I tell that story till this day. March 2nd, 2002, I bought you all's course. And I remember changing around my sales page and stuff like that. And that was my first $1,000 day. We made $1,100 that day, March 2nd, 2002. And my life would never be the same after that. And that would put me on a trajectory to where we are today. So I just want to say I would be remiss if I got off this call and didn't dedicate that to Corey Rudel and you yourself, Derek Gehl, because you guys have definitely been a huge inspiration to me in my journey.
Thanks very much, Jermaine. That means a lot to me. And it's interesting. It's been 10 years now, and thanks for taking the time to be here. Like I said, I'm gonna hunt you down again. This isn't the last interview we're gonna do, because I think you've got so much gold there in your mind that I want to get at. Again, Jermaine, thanks very much for taking the time here today. I know everybody will learn a lot. You were so generous with that. Thanks again. Thanks so much. And I look forward to connecting with you again.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
All right, everybody, that was another episode from EntrepreneurIgnited.com, full of valuable tips. I would recommend that if you're listening to this in your car, you're just kind of listening, take this back, listen to it again and again. Jermaine shared so many tips, strategies, tricks that you can utilize to grow your business. I don't care what level you're at, whether you're just getting started, whether you're advanced. There was something there for everybody, and that's what I want to bring to you guys in a podcast. Not fluff, not theory, but real practical entrepreneurs that are doing it. And Jermaine is one of the guys that I respect that has done this for a very, very long time. So there's a lot to learn there. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next episode.
You're listening to the Entrepreneur Ignited podcast, where we aim to simplify online business so you can make more money. Now, here's your host, Derek Gehl.